Welcome to the second week of our symbolic frame. We are in the second week of Unit 5, which is, of course, the last week of Unit 5, and at the end of this week in the symbolic frame, then we will also do the symbolic frame paper and the symbolic knowledge check. But let's look at last week and even the week before. I was just thrilled with how well you all did with your political frame papers. You made some really good points. Let me just tell you about two of them. One of you said that an interesting, scarce resource is key to my organization. To have people with power help create the scarce resource of departmental collaboration. Let me just repeat that. It is key in my organization to have the people with power help create the scarce resource of departmental collaboration. So, collaboration is a scarce resource for some. And really, when you think about it, maybe it's a scarce resource for most of us. Certainly funding is a scarce resource, but there are so many other things that aren't there? So here's another great statement that one of you made. And really it's a summary. So, excellent summary of scarce resources particularized for different groups. So let's look at this. Quote, manufacturing facilities compete against each other for human resources and capital funding. Organizational groups compete for funding and policy implementation. And at the lowest levels of the organization, operations departments compete for scarce maintenance, man hours, and better working conditions. So notice that one of you has identified that the scarce resources change depending on where you are in the organization and what that particular group needs. And when we understand what the group needs, then in a political way, we can influence helping that group get what they need in order to help us get what we need. And then perhaps put together a coalition to serve multiple groups and multiple elements within an organization in order to move the entire organization forward. So some of you said that politics for you has held a negative connotation for many years, and for some of you, you've even avoided it. Well, I'm very pleased to hear that you've learned a different way to understand how a political frame advantages and really is positive for an organization and the group, different groups within it. And that when we understand how to leverage influence in a positive way, then we can serve our organizations even toward moving them closer to achieving their missions and possibly their visions. So anyway, I just want you to know how well you all did with your political papers and your understandings, and even last week in your discussion of what you viewed as your personal aha in the political frame. So let's move then from the political frame to the symbolic frame. So now in the symbolic frame, we're not talking about influence, we're talking about meaning. We're talking about different icons, different logos, different symbols, different cultural elements that even alone give us a sense of what the organization is about. Give us even a sense of the mission. If we look at page, I think it's 246, a symbol is something that stands for or suggests something else. It conveys socially constructed meaning beyond its intrinsic or obvious functional use. So we want to take a look at the symbols this week and within our organizations and the culture that they evoke. Let's just take a look at what symbols might be. So let's go to our slides here and just take a look at what the symbolic perspective is really all about. The symbolic frame metaphor is a carnival, a temple, a theater. It's about the presentation, not necessarily about the hard facts, not the organization and how it is ordered and the reporting structure. It's not even the bottom line. It's what the presentation of all of those things leaves with the audience. And the audience might be the customers, it might be another group of people, it might be the perception of the media. So what their takeaway is and what the members' takeaway is the strength of the symbolic frame. So the central concepts then are culture, meaning, ritual. Ritual might even be things like our annual reviews. We do a certain annual review performance every year, putting together various pieces and parts for our supervisors to look at. Our supervisors perform their functions, roll those things up to the next level, and eventually they roll back down, and with a certain pomp and circumstance, we go into a meeting with our supervisor, learn what our performance review is considered from those above us, and whether or not we will get a percentage of increase, whether or not we will have any corrective actions, and all of those pieces. And we go through the very same thing every year. So that's a kind of a ritual, a dance that we perform. So there's metaphor, there's ceremony. A ceremony at ISU, and definitely pomp and circumstance, is our graduation ceremony. We also have the beginning, coming into, especially for traditional students, is walking through the arch. And that's entering ISU, and then we walk back through the arch going the other way, throw up our caps and tassels as a ceremony and a kind of ritual of commencement, of leaving, after we have gone through our commencement exercise and received symbols of what will come to be our diploma once it's mailed to us. There are stories, there are heroes, all of those pieces and parts are so important to an understanding of meaning of the organization. If some of you had, maybe for your church, you went on a mission, and so there were certain ceremonies. There were whether when you went away, there were certain ceremonies when you came back. For some of you, you are married and you've had that kind of a ceremony, and exchanging vows and exchanging rings, which are also cultural pieces we wear in the United States and in Western culture. Wear the ring on a specific finger of the left hand. In other cultures, it's on the right hand. And so the ceremony matters. If you've been in the military, then you've gone through any number of ceremonies. You've heard stories. There are certain people who are considered heroes. That's all part of symbols and perspective. In Apple, Steve Jobs remains an icon, a hero, a bigger-than-life figure. He just came out in a movie, and some of you may have already seen it. You may have read his book, or multiple books are actually out. So there are various kinds, and as a leader, he is inspiring. As a matter of fact, people who follow in his footsteps, Tim Cook, have big shoes to fill and big expectations from all quarters as to whether or not he will live up to the Steve Jobs icon, image, hero, bigger than life. Will he do it, or will he fail Apple and Apple will just become fade into mediocrity? So that's almost an expectation of, let's see if we can't knock him off the mountain kind of expectation. So that's part of the symbol and the symbolic frame that we're talking about. The basic leadership challenge is to create faith, beauty, and meaning. We want our members to follow us, to continue to believe. For Nike, it's this swoosh. We don't even have to say Nike anymore because the swoosh itself says everything. It says, just do it. It is so powerful as an icon that seeing it conveys all of that, all of go beyond, do better, do more. That's where most branding want to be. That just seeing the icon, the symbol, gets us there, evokes that much emotion, feeling, and sense of the gigantic mission and vision of that brand. So let's look on. The symbolic perspective then, the importance of the event is what it means. So the trappings of the event help to sell that brand, that meaning, that perspective, that symbol. So we have so much theater that is about to, and actually has already begun to roll out in our political arena when we're talking about elections. There's going to be so much money spent on creating the trappings, the ceremony, the culture that people want you to have a takeaway about a specific political candidate. And it will be the ritual, the ceremony, and that pomp and circumstance that they're hoping will convey that that person is the leader you want to mark on your ballot as your vote for the next president of the United States. So creating those symbols is just so important. It's what automobile manufacturers want to do. It's what universities want to do in order to sell their product, their service, what they are and who they are, and what all of that means to you, to me. So let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at all of these symbols. Here's the Nike swoosh. This is what it started out to be. And look what it is now. Only the swoosh. Apple, I don't know if you can see this. Apple, that's a tiny apple with someone sitting under the tree. Apple, computer. That was in 1975. This is Apple today. Google, Samsung, Yahoo. All of these are symbols. They have with them stories and fairy tales that create all of this for us. There has been ritual and ceremony to get from here to here. Along with that, there's humor and play. In order for us to buy Starbucks, to go from paying 50 cents for a cup of coffee, just regular old Joe, now we want special coffee because we're worth it. We want Starbucks, right? So we've created a myth about what that means. And that's what we, as wanting to look at the symbolic perspective in our organizations, How are we getting our customers to what we want them to see our organizations as? What gets them there? What brand changes gets them there? Well, there's theater that goes along with that. When the production and results are hard to measure, correct appearance and presentation become the prevailing measure of effectiveness. So notice what that's about. When we don't have production and results that are measurable, we don't have the statistics, then we go for appearance. And sometimes we go for appearance and then punctuate it with any statistics we've got. But the way to get there, is the appearance and the presentation. Theatrical imagery offers a hopeful note. Remember that President Obama ran on hope and change? Yes. Not on his background, not on what he could do, not on the ability that he had. He ran on hope and change. Theatrical imagery offers a hopeful note. For a variety of reasons, we may be restless, frustrated, lost, or searching to renew our faith. We commission a new play called Change. So who do we have in our political arena now who is saying change? Who is really out there? Yes, you all know who I mean. It's all about theater, right? It's all about theater. So looking at our organizations as theater then, what do? We have meetings, and are all of our meetings really gaining what we want, or are they illusion of advancement? But we still have meetings. When we end our meeting, we plan another meeting, right? When will we meet again? And what's planning about? Is it more about the rain dance, or more about actually producing rain? So think about that when you're in meetings next week. Are we planning to really get success? Or is part of that illusion and a rain dance? So when we're evaluating, is it about the decision tool, or are we justifying something? And I'm not making a judgment here. I'm not saying that any of these are bad. I'm saying we need to be aware that sometimes it's theater that wins the day. It's theater, the presentation, that can be as powerful as any statistic, as anything we actually produce. Isn't that interesting? Look around at your organization and see if you agree. So let's look at the principles then of the symbolic frame. How one becomes a member is important. So what's symbolic, what ritual is about becoming a member in your organization? What do you need to do in order to be considered a member? Diversity provides a competitive advantage. How have we been successful with providing diversity? And diversity in all of its ways. We're not necessarily limiting to one factor. We're talking about how people are able to bring lots of different perspectives to the table in lots of ways, a variety of ways, so that we don't have just a yes group. We've got people who say, well, is that the way we really want to go? And what will it get us if we do that? An example, not command, bonds the team. Someone said that telling the story is the real important way in the political arena to win the day. Example and story, not command, bonds the team. So think about your leaders. Think about you as a leader. Are you leading by example, or are you leading by fiat, by mandate? Which works the best for you of those two ways? And what about other ways? Using jargon fosters cohesion, and consider that. Think about how the inside story, the jargon, helps us know who we are and that we're part of this group. Stories invoke history and values and identity. Stories of who we are, of our past. Stories, even if they're not entirely factual, help us understand the way that we are and how we are and what makes us who we are. Humor and play helps us step back, reduce tension, bond, increase creativity, be better at what we do, and not just be at our desks all the time. What organizational stories, heroes, heroines, deeds of repute do we recall and tell with pride and with humor? In your organization, what's that about for you? What symbols do they evoke and perhaps describe who we are and what we value? What are those symbols for you? So let's have some fun with this symbolic frame. Think about what brings meaning for you. I look forward to your papers. I look forward to our discussions. And as we then go forward and take a look at our activity for this week, we are going to have a graphic activity of our symbols and culture. So we're drawing what the symbols and the culture promote and declare for who you are, who we are in our groups. So this graphic then is going to be part of our paper. Remember that we want our graphics or our activities to be included in the paper, not discussing it just in the paper, but the rubrics call for the graphic to be part of your paper, and all of your activities should be included in your paper. So I'll look forward to your graphic of your symbols and culture to be included in your paper, and then we'll post our paper at the end of the week, and on Sunday it's due, and then we'll have our symbolic frame knowledge check. I'm really looking forward to it. Have a great week, and I'll see you in our forum.